So here I have my modified plan that I took, and I actually started to add to it. And basically what I did for the program is I did a terrace out here, and I did an open space here and a pool here. And now what I want to do is I want to introduce the concept of blocks. Essentially, blocks are a way of you to organize information. So a block is basically a number of objects that are saved together to form one entity. Usually blocks are used for complex shapes such as fixtures, plumbing fixtures, furniture, etc., etc. In order to create an easier workflow, because instead of having to redraft or having to select a large number of individual objects, you can copy, move, or erase blocks as if they were one object. Blocks are also really useful if you have multiples of one objects. For example, if you have doors or windows, oftentimes you'll make blocks out of those, and you can just use them over and over and over again. And once a block is created and copied, if you need to change it, you can reference the block and you can make changes, and those changes will reflect throughout the whole drawing. So blocks can either be defined within the drawing, exported from a drawing, or as a separate file can be inserted into this current file as a block. So what we want to do first is we want to start off by creating a block. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to draw a series of objects in order to make a piece of furniture that I'm going to use throughout my program. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a lounge chair. Okay, since this is supposed to be a pool, I'm going to create a chair that people can lounge on. So I'm just, going to do it generally. And with my objects, okay, essentially what I'm doing is I'm just creating a chair, a lounger chair. Okay, and what I want to do, it's important when you start to draw this block, okay, you want to make sure that your original objects, and I always say original objects being what you did to first create the block, you want to make sure that these are on layer 0. So there's very few things that we're going to have on layer 0, and this is one of them. So to make the block, what we do is we type in the command block, which is BLOCK, or what you can also do is look up to the ribbon up here, and there is actually a menu of all of the tools that are associated with creating blocks. Okay, these are very common, so that's why I want to introduce the concept of blocks. So if I type in block, what comes up is essentially the block definition, and that gives us the main options for setting up a name, a base point, and selecting the objects that will be part of the block. It's important, as I said, that we draw the objects that will become the objects that are going to become the block on layer 0, because once we create the block and we insert it what I call on its proper layer, it will take up the properties of the layer that you inserted it on. So if the layer has a blue color to it, it will take up those properties if the original objects are on layer 0. Okay, if your proper layer has a hidden line type, if the original objects of the block are on layer 0, it's also going to take on those properties. Okay, if not, then what happens is it starts to get a little bit goofed up. Okay, because then it's going to take on the properties of the layers that you drew it on. So for example, even though it's a piece of furniture, okay, the original objects of the block should not be on the furniture layer, but they should be on the layer 0 layer. Okay, because if for some reason we need to have multiple furniture layers, and you put it on the original furniture layer, and you put it, for example, you assign it to furniture 2 layer, okay, it's still going to keep the properties of the original furniture layer. And, because that's what the original objects were drawn on. And once we get into turning layers on and off, that's where it starts to get a little screwy, okay? So we want to make sure that all the objects that are in the original block are on layer 0, and I'll show you a way of editing that after if you don't start off with that. But for the block definition, what we want to do is we want to give it a name. So I'm going to call this lounge chair. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to specify the base point, and this is essentially the insertion point for my block. So I'm going to click on pick point, and it's going to jump me back into the drawing. And usually I pick an end point or a center point, midpoint for my object. Again, as you start to use AutoCAD more, you'll start to realize where it's best and more advantageous for inserting these base points. So I'm going to use the midpoint. It's going to pop me back in. It's going to ask me to select my objects. So I'm going to click on select objects. I'm going to click and select those objects of the chair. hit enter, it's going to bounce me back in, and now you'll see that there's a preview. Okay, don't worry about it being annotative. We're going to get into annotative scale later on, and keep in mind that you can make blocks annotative. Okay, I know it doesn't mean anything now, but it really is a good thing later on. And now this is all that I really need to do. I'm going to hit OK. Okay, and what happens is you'll notice that my block is now one unified entity. So right now it's on layer 0. Okay, if we look up in our layers, and what we need to do is we need to put it on our furniture layer. So I'm going to go to my layers, I'm going to find my furniture layer, okay, and now you'll see that because it was on layer 0, okay, if I assigned it to my furniture layer, now it turns blue, okay, which is the color of my furniture layer. And this is also very helpful for when we start to plot too as well. If the original objects, okay, are not on layer 0 and do not take on the properties of the current layer that it's on. So for example, if I drew it on a wall layer and I assigned it to a furniture layer, it's going to plot out to be really, really thick because our wall layers have the thickest lines of our pen settings. Okay, now what we can do is we can either create the block this way, okay, or we can insert a block, and that's using the insert command. Okay, and you'll see that it's right up above here under your block, and you can also type in insert. Okay, when you insert a block, so how this is helpful is that you might have a series of blocks that are in your file. So the other thing to note about blocks is that they stay within your file. Okay, they don't stay from you know, AutoCAD to AutoCAD to AutoCAD. It stays within your drawing file. Okay, so any of the blocks that we create are going to be in this file. We might not use, okay, maybe, you know, we might not use all of the blocks that we have in this file. So for example, if I have this lounge chair and I have some other chairs or door files or whatever, I might not have them. Okay, so for example, if I get rid of this, okay, and come back to it later and want to insert my lounge chair again, if I type in insert, find my lounge chair in my list of blocks here, hit OK. Okay, basically we want to specify the insertion point on screen, typically. I mean, sometimes you will have a specific coordinate, but that's not very common. The scale, we also want to leave that as 111, okay, basically leaving it 100%. Angle 0, and then, you know, everything else is fine, so I can hit OK. And what it does is it again allows you to insert this block. Okay, and again, it's white because it was inserted on layer 0, and I just need to select that, change that to the proper layer, the furniture layer, and now it assigns it to that. Okay, now what I can do is I can copy my blocks. Okay, I can rotate them, so if I want to rotate them around the pool, you know, to make it look a little bit more fluid, you know, a little less stiff, I can start to rotate them. Okay, I can copy this guy down, I can rotate. Move it over here, you know, might not be a lot of room for it. Although I don't know exactly what scale these guys are at since I drew it arbitrarily. And I can essentially come up with a, you know, composition with my furniture. I can start to place my furniture. I can, you know, take this, rotate it out. Okay, and I can just use my modify tools, you know, in order to copy it around, to rotate it, you know, and I can also mirror them too as well. If I mirror a chair, okay, it can look like that. I can erase them. I can treat them like any other object, okay, because essentially what they are is they're just one unified object. And you'll see that even if I select it and I click on the grip, okay, it works the same way as others where I can use that grip to move it. And then if I insert it again, okay, you'll see that it will always insert it as I had originally drawn it. The key advantages using blocks lies not only in the fact that they allow you to copy and move a large number of otherwise separate objects as one entity, the blocks give you the opportunity to be edited. Upon editing a block within the drawing, all instances blocks are updated automatically. So basically this happens what's in what's called the block editor, okay, and you can go up to edit in the block menu, or what you can do is either type in EDIT for B edit, okay, or you can double click on the block. And what this does is it brings you to a list of the blocks where you find your block, and it should automatically point to it, and hit OK. And what this does is it brings you into like this bizarro block editing world. Okay, everything turns green at the top, and it looks like you're in model space, but you're actually kind of hovering above model space. And this is a space that allows you to actually edit the block. So if I need to edit more information, to add more information, I can do that. If I need to change the layers, so for example, if I started by drawing this on the furniture layer and not layer 0, I can change that here. And what this does is it allows me to make changes to an individual block that will actually change all of the blocks. Another thing with blocks, you can make them dynamic, you can make them move. That's what all of this information is about. We're not going to get into that. That's a little bit more advanced, but you'll see that when we start to work with blocks, there are blocks that you can edit, and we'll see that later on. To get into the options to edit this block, okay, I'm going to go to the Home tab, and you'll see that these are all of our drawing tools. So here, you can change the layers to make sure that all the objects are in layer 0. Okay, and oops, cancel you. And what I can do is I can start to add information. So for example, if I need to add, maybe some buttons to this, although it would make the lounge chair a little bit more uncomfortable. So what I'm doing is just drawing a circle, 2 lines. I'm trimming out these lines to make it look like it's some sort of a padded surface. And then I can copy these throughout. Okay, I can even put some on the headrest. Okay, so if this changes and I go to close block editor, okay, which is always going to be in the upper right, it's going to ask me if I want to save my changes. I'm going to say save changes to the lounge chair, hit OK, and now you'll see that every time that my block, okay, has been inserted as a block, if it is a proper block, it's going to make the changes to all of it. So again, all I have to do is double click on it, or type in B edit, or go to the tool button above, go and hit OK. And for example, if I want it to be a circular chair, I can actually get rid of the whole thing. I can draw a circular chair. With a backrest. Save those changes, and as long as it's this block, I can save all the changes to it, and you'll see that now these changes have been made throughout. The only reason why this is white is because that's still on the layer 0 layer, but it should be on the furniture layer.